Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration. So I'm very excited about the guests I'm having on today. It's kind of cool because when I first started my channel, I was kind of just toying around with what direction it was going to go. And I remember I was on Reddit, and I kind of was encountering Mormons on various subreddits. And I just remember on one of them, it popped up, "Hey, I'm having a book giveaway. There's 5 copies available," and and it talked about his story. And I thought, well, I'm going to put in for that contest. And by golly, I got myself a copy of this wonderful book called "Losing My Religion: Why I Love and Left My Mormon Faith." Now, often, us evangelicals have a reputation of like really just beating you guys, and that's not the purpose of this channel. Nor is this the purpose of this channel is to have a bunch of angry ex-Mormons on to go bash the church. Not interested. There's plenty of other places to do that. But what I found intriguing about this particular book was, well, like I said, the title, "Why I Love and Left My Mormon Faith." So this is kind of a positive story. And it's not even necessarily a story where he's bashing his church in general. It's kind of a story about leaving religion in general as well. And having wrestling with God and what all that is all about, and wrestling with faith and doubt. And I just think it was a beautiful little story that he had to tell. Now, Eric T. Hanson is his name, and he is mostly known in Germany as a book author. He's just starting to make his way into the English-speaking world and is trying to expand his base there. So I just thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to have Eric on, and let's get to know Eric. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it. This will be great.
Great. So let's just start at the beginning. Here you are, this Mormon kid, born and raised in Hawaii, correct?
Yeah, well, raised in Hawaii. I was born in Washington State, but my family moved to Hawaii when I was 6, and I grew up there, and it was kind of a mixed experience for me. But
Mixed experience, huh? Just like
well, it's like some people are given great blessings, but don't know what to do with them. And I was a skinny kid. I was an introvert. I wanted to read books and be by myself. And Hawaii is for going out on the beach and being in the sun, and getting a tan body and being social. And that just wasn't me. And so I sat in my room and read the Lord of the Rings and Conan. While my big brothers, who I hated and they hated me, at least growing up, were out, surfing. And I dreamed about coming to Europe and being an intellectual. And that was just the wrong place to be. Now that I am in Europe, I've been living in Berlin or in Germany for 30 years. And, it's always raining here. It's always dark. Everyone kind of has a bad attitude. Everyone is, a mixture of arrogant and frustrated. And, intellectuals are not that bright, I've discovered, and I just want to go back to Hawaii and lay on the beach.
Dude, what's stopping you?
Yeah, well, it's expensive, and my career is here. I've earned a career as a writer now. I'm a writer of fiction and nonfiction. Various people have a certain reputation, minor, kind of a moderate reputation, and so that's what I do for a living. So.
Oh yeah, well, you got to stay connected to your home base. That's important, and your community. So okay, so you're kind of this bookish kid living in beautiful Hawaii, would rather be in his bedroom reading Lord of the Rings. And you, of course, are raised in a Mormon house of faith. And right. Just tell us a little bit about what it was like to be a young Mormon in being raised in Hawaii.
Well, Hawaii. There was a kind of dualism there. Hawaii is a very liberal place, politically liberal, and it's where all the the hippies like to go, and it's always, you don't need to vote in presidential elections because they always vote left, and the schools are liberal, and so I grew up kind of with a liberal slant, but in a conservative family. So my family was definitely kind of Midwest. They're all from Washington State, so they had this Midwestern white tradition. But I was living in kind of a very Western California, ultra California leftist kind of environment, and it's very interesting. I got to know both sides of the story, politically and kind of morally. And my parents were strict conservatives, but only to a point. I'm not sure that my father, I'm not sure how much my father believed in every detail of Mormonism. He was an engineer and he was very much scientific. He would, every once in a while, just to kind of disturb us kids, he would throw out some kind of fanciful argument about how to reconcile evolution or the theory of the origin of the species with religion, with God, with the story of the Bible, with the story of the Adam and Eve and Genesis. And he would say, well, maybe God took pieces of other worlds and put them together, and on those pieces, life had already been there. So that's how we got the dinosaurs, And so, and it was saying with tongue in cheek, but in fact, he knew that, the science is basically provable. It's there. The dinosaurs are there. Evolution is, at least to a point, true, Yet he believed, and so he lived in this divide, kind of tearing apart, and he was fine with it. He just kind of said to himself, and kind of secretly, kind of subliminally told us, just live with the contradiction. It's part of life.
Then later in your story, you talk about a friend who talks about there's truth in paradox or something like that. So it that's kind of where it was coming. Your father was coming from as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, that's right. I didn't connect those two things. The truth is there's truth in paradox was a missionary companion of mine who said that, and it could be right. It could be that's maybe why I felt attracted to that idea, because I had it as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like that to me. So I'm assuming you went through the standard routine. You were baptized at the age of 8.
Yep, absolutely.
Basically raised a typical Mormon household. And then the time comes where, you're around that time where you start contemplating whether you should go on a mission or not. Now, in your book, you have 3 prayers. So let's briefly talk about the first prayer.
Well, okay, so these are, I mean, of course, I prayed much more than 3 times in my life, of course, but there were three prayers that were kind of iconic for me. They changed my life. There was at a point in my life where there was really something changed. And the first one was, of course, whether the church was true. And I was 8 years old, so I was, you can argue that when you're 8, you don't make decisions on your own. You make decisions to please your parents, and maybe that's true. I don't know what I was thinking or when I was 8, but I knew that I took it seriously. And my parents told me, and the bishop told me, it's time for you to decide whether you want to be baptized or not. You got to know you are not a Mormon. You are not a member of the church. You have not yet accepted the gospel. If you want to accept it, now's your first chance. You can do it at any other time. You can say no. You can do whatever you want. But at this point, you have a decision to make. And and I knew this was a decision that would, determine the rest of my life. This is either you're in the boat or you're not in the boat. And if I was going to be in the boat, then I was going to be living that life. Of course, you could say I didn't really have a choice because I was still my parents' kid. But for me, it was a real decision. And I really made that decision. And part of it was finding out if the church was true. And so I had to, and everyone told me, I did what everyone told me to do. They tell you when you're a kid, pray about it and find out whether the church is true. You will hear a voice from heaven, from God. He will whisper it to your heart, the still small voice, and you will know that the gospel is true because he will tell it to you. And so it went back and forth in my mind. And one night I didn't lay down. I knelt down at my bed, closed the door. No one else knew I was doing this. And I really prayed. I was probably, an hour, felt like an hour, maybe it was only half an hour, 45 minutes, I don't know, on my knees. And I just kept praying. I just kept saying, God, are you there? Is this true? Do you want me to join the church? And, there was nothing. And I was kind of, trying to keep my mind from wandering off to, some movie or, Starsky and Hutch on television or whatever, and then, but I kept with it. And the more I forced myself to do it, the more somehow something inside me realized that I was serious about it. And at one point, and I'm thinking it was after an hour or after 45 minutes at least, I suddenly felt this a fulfilling warmth, almost as if God's hand was, patting me on the back saying, You got this. It's true. You've gotten me to speak. And I really felt that it was true. Now you could say it now from the perspective of, you're just kidding yourself. Auto suggestion. You talk yourself into believing things that aren't true every day. It's all the time. We're always doing that while our minds are malleable organs. But to me, it was real, and it was a real experience, and it was a real part of my life. And so I got baptized, and that was prayer number one. And it was whenever I think of that, I think of, not often does an 18-year-old kid get to make a major decision in his life on his own. Mom and dad tells you what to eat, when to go to school, when to get up, go to church. You do what mom and dad says, most everything. But that kind of a decision, the decision, I'm going to be a Mormon now. I'm going to believe and I'm going to serve God. I think that's a blessing for any kid. I think any kid should, at some point early in life, their parents would say, here's the decision you have to make, and it's completely your decision, and I want you to take your life into your hands. And that's what I did. I took my life into your hands. So I went, got baptized, and that was it. And I knew that I was in command of my life, in a limited sense. But yeah, so that was prayer number one. That was a prayer that really did. And then the other prayer was when I was already 19. I was already late. I was going back and forth. Should I go on a mission or not? Part of it was I wanted to go to Europe. And so in the back of my mind, if I go on a mission and I know a language, a second language, they'll send me to where that language is. And so I took, 3 years of German in high school in order to get them. And I did horribly. I got D's every year. It was just pure torture. But in order to get them to send me to some European country, I could have taken French, but they didn't have French in school. It was Japanese, Spanish, and German. And if I take Spanish, I'll be sent to Latin America. And Japanese, I wanted to go to Europe and see the Middle Ages. That's what I was in love with. And so I took German for 3 years and got D's, but it was still I knew it was probably enough to get me there. And then the question was, am I going to do it? And I put off the question again and again and again, and then eventually I did the same thing again. I sat down, I knelt down in bed, closed the door. No one knew I was doing it, and I really knelt there. And it took again about an hour, 45 minutes, an hour felt like, and I just kind of forced it. I just said, I'm not getting up until I know. I have to know: is the church true? Am I on the right path? God, do you want me to go on a mission? And again, after I began to focus, and after, I would say kind of in a rhetorical sense, after God knew that I wasn't kidding around, I felt that same spirit, that same warmth that came down and said, yes, the church is true, and you should go on a mission.
And this is the interesting thing, because, in cases, there are in instances when they, you get your calling to go to the MTC and where you're going to go and everything like that. There are many times where the language or the country they wanted to go, like they knew French, but they end up going to Spain. It doesn't always work out.
No, of course not. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were foreordained perhaps to to end up in Germany. And so that must have been very exciting to you when you heard that news.
Yeah, that was quite, I remember that day. It was just, my heart was pounding. I ripped open the letter looking for it, and it was Dusseldorf. It said Dusseldorf. I said, Dusseldorf, that sounds German to me. That's got to be, and so, yeah.
That's great. So you end up in Dusseldorf, and you're in a new country. First of all, you're in a place you want to be, right? And
yes.
it's so it must be so awesome. But you're also in a different world as a missionary. You're kind of isolated in a way that's very unique to the mission experience. So tell me a little bit about being in this place you want to be, but also have to be in a place that's completely different than, or an experience that would be completely different to most people.
Well, it's not, the thing is, you're not alone. You're in a system, and they tell you where to go. The room that you're going to live in with your companion, the apartment is rented. It's been rented long ago. They tell you what to pay. Your dad sends you the money. Everything is, and you go with a partner, a companion who then will tell you where to go shopping and how to, do this, and you're learning the language. So you're in this capsule, but you're not really isolated because you feel like you are being carried in an organization. And of course, you go out and you start to talk to people, and the first half year you have no idea what they're saying. Even though I took 3 years of German, I just was a complete beginner. I just was muddling through, and in the evenings and mornings studying German, and going out and listening to it and try to get it right. It took me, first half year I could not do a conversation, and so it's very much a different world from the actual world around you. You sit down with people, with members and with non-members, and you talk differently, of course, to the members and to the non-members. And you go through the streets and you see everything that's different. The dimensions are different. Everything is a little bit more crowded. The streets are not as wide. It's more city than in America. The cars are smaller. Everything is, you go in, the stereos were smaller in the apartments. Everything was a little more compact. People dressed differently. And of course the language, you had no idea what these people were talking about. And it was a feeling that I was in a safe capsule, but in a new world, discovering a new planet. And I loved that. And that's one of the reasons why I came back after my mission, decided and wanted to, of course, I always wanted to come to Europe. But one of the reasons was that it became then so fascinating for me that I wanted to learn everything I could about this new culture, which is very different from the American culture. Starting with literature, I studied German literature, so medieval German literature in Munich when I came back from my mission. And after my mission, when I was through, I saved up money, and I took all the money I had and I bought, the collected works of Goethe and Schiller, and other classics and records and things like that, so I could have some of that German culture back in Hawaii. I took a huge bag of stuff back, and it was a challenge. It was really almost a traumatic experience because you're rejected every day. Every day the doors slam on your face, door after door after door. You walk down the street, people will, make fun of you. But at the same time, it was an incredible experience of discovery that I just loved.
So I just, a little context here. Around what era are we talking about when you were serving your mission?
This must have been, I'm always fuzzy on the years. I looked it up for the book, and I got it right in the book, but now I've forgotten the guy. I think it was 81 to 80. Well, I returned after studying 1.5 years in Hawaii in December of 83.
Okay.
So 83, 82, I would have finished in 82. So it would have been 80 to 82.
Okay. So yeah.
But in my mind, it was 81 to 83. But that can't be right. So it was something like that.
Early 80s, and so we got the height of Ronald Reagan just came into office, right. Height of the Cold War. Just out of curiosity, did you ever get out to Berlin or see the Berlin Wall or anything like that? Or Dusseldorf is not near any of that, correct? So
no, Dusseldorf is on the Rhine. It's on the west part of Germany, and no, as a missionary, they won't let you do anything like that. No.
Yeah, you stay in your lane there. Yeah. So, so this is an interesting story because you're not having a whole lot of luck. You're not baptizing anybody. You're just you're having doors slammed in your face, and you're just very awkward, and you hardly know the language, and the culture is different, but you're learning, and all this stuff's happening. But then one day you run into this home, and you're talking to this woman, and she seemed interested in the faith. So you guys scheduled a visit to give your presentation. And so you do. But then her daughter walks in and starts listening. So tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, she was just, she was just a young girl. She was, she must have been 16 or something. And she walked in, she heard something, and obviously she was looking for something. And she said, yes, come back. I want to know more. We were surprised because, first of all, we never hear, yes, come back. I want to know more. We never hear that. And secondly, we were focusing on the mother. But the daughter said, I want to know more. And so we said, great. And we came back and she was interested and she started learning and she became like the one person I baptized. And we baptized her. We asked her, would you like to get baptized? We brought her to church. She came to church. She got to know the people at church. She read the Book of Mormon or part of it. I think she read it all. And we said, would you like to get baptized? And she said, yes. And it was like, whoa! It was just amazing. This amazing thing that after, well, I'd been struggling for 1.5 years and without one single baptism, and very few people who were interested and who would listen to more than one or two of the lessons of this lesson we memorized. And she said yes, and I got to baptize her. We went to. I remember that day. In Dusseldorf, she lived in Krefeld. It was a little town outside of Dusseldorf, but the baptismal font was in Dusseldorf, and so we went to Dusseldorf, and she was coming with her own car, or with her parents' car, with her friends, and we were sure she wouldn't show up because after 1.5 years, you don't get used to people saying yes, I'm interested, and then I'm going to do it. They say kind of politely, oh, I'm interested maybe, but maybe not, and then when you come back, they're not there. Or something like that. So it's always the take back. It's always the build up hopes and then you tear them down again. And that's what we were used to. That's the paradigm of our lives. And then she showed up, and we got down in the warm water of that baptismal font, and I put her underwater all the way. I checked to make sure she was underway. I lifted her up, and it was like. Suddenly, all the sun you've ever felt in summer just flowed through me. It was just an incredible spiritual experience. I just was convinced, I was sure, and maybe it's true, that the Holy Ghost was in that room, that God was accepting her into his church. It really was that intense spiritual experience. I've never had spiritual experience like that before. And she felt the same thing, and we felt almost like one person in that moment. At least that's what she said later, and that's what I felt also. And and so that was it. And then like 2 days later, I was transferred to another city, to my last city, Oberhausen. And 2 or 3 times, she, with other friends from the church, came and visited me. And our, both of us, me and my companions, we were always chaperoned, and she was kind of strange the whole time. She was kind of like almost crying whenever she was there, but she didn't say anything. And then like the second or third time, she was kind of just in the same room with me. We never really talked much together, except for we were talking also the Z language. German, like French, has two forms of its speech. It's, Mr. Hanson and Eric. It's the formal speech, which is you is the word for you is Z, and it's the informal speech which you talk to with God or with children is du. You is do. So it's 2 different forms of you, and we were using Z. We're using the formal language of strangers talking to each other, and that was law of missionaries. You had to use. You could never say use an intimate, informal language with a girl. Never. That was like having sex with her. You would be transferred out. But we did that, and it was a very distant relationship. But still, there was a strong electricity every time we were in a room together, and I realized I was in love with her. And so for the first time, one of the first times in my life, I probably did it before, but it was the first time in my life when I really said, I'm going to break a rule here. I'm going to do it. I don't care. I'm not going to tell my missionary president that I broke the rule. The rule was on the last day of your mission, you go straight to the Bahnhof, straight to the train station. You get on the train, go to the mission home. You do not visit friends. You do not go off somewhere. The devil is waiting to catch you. He will get you. You go straight to the train station and you get on that train and you go home. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go an hour earlier. I'm going to go to Krefeld on that train, and I'm going to knock on her door, and I'm going to tell her I love her. And I did that. And I knocked on the door, and she was in her pajamas. It was early morning. I did not announce my coming. And I tried to make a joke. I tried to, pretend to be a stranger, but of course she recognized my accent and my voice. Plus I was still speaking Z. And and she almost cried when she came out. And we sat in the room with her mom. Her mom was there in the kitchen, and I said, in the formal language, the language, I think I have feelings for you. And she said, I think I have feelings for you. And I said, well, gotta go. And I went. Didn't kiss her. There was nothing, I wasn't breaking that many rules. So I was still wary of the devil trying to tempt me, in the last minute to do something bad. And then we wrote each other, from Hawaii, 3 times a week, called whenever we had the money. It was much more expensive then. That was, early 80s. And I worked and went to school to learn linguistics, in order to be able to get a job as an English teacher here in Germany when I came back, and earned my way through college here in Germany, which I then did after 1.5 years. I had enough money and that education together to come to Germany and to get on university in Munich. And
let's just go back a little bit, because you kind of did something a little unconventional as you're about ready to depart. And that was, you had your final meeting with your mission president. And he basically went through the boilerplate questions that he would go through, but then he presented you a contract. And tell us a little bit about that.
That was really weird. And I would like to know, I don't have any contact with any of my former missionary colleagues, and I don't have any contact anymore with other Mormons, really. I really am out. I left the church, as it says in the book, I left the church. It was, 30 years ago now that I left the church, when I was 30. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I don't have, I'm not in the whole Mormonism thing anymore. But it would be really interesting to know if this happened to anyone else. We had the final, the final debriefing, the final interview with the mission president. He said, how was it your mission? What did you, blah, blah, blah. And he gave me the warning, when you go back, the girls are going to be interested in you because you're a return missionary. That's what Mormon girls are looking for, return mission. Don't take the first girl that, throws herself at you, be aware and don't jump into it either and give way to temptation. There's a lot of actually good advice probably. And then in the end he said, and here's a little thing I want you to sign. I want all the missionaries to sign. And it's a contract, and it's a contract between me and him personally, where I promise him not to do certain things. So, of course, keep the commandments that I had promised to keep when I was baptized, right? The covenant, I made a covenant with God when I was baptized, and that covenant was still valid. But in addition to that, I had to check in with him every year. I had to never grow my hair long. And I knew even then that I was going to grow my hair long. That was it. I was going to do that. And a couple other things like that. I was never going to, wear certain clothes, hippie clothes or something like that. And I said, well, wait a minute. You're my mission president. You're not a prophet. You're not God. You don't represent God. You were only a representative of the church as a missionary. After that, you're just some normal guy. You're a retiree somewhere. I didn't say that to him. This is what I was thinking. And I said, how would I make a contract with you? What authority do you have to, and it just seemed so strange to me. I didn't see this coming at all. And I said, well, I already made a contract with God, a covenant to obey the commandments, and those are his commandments. So I made a covenant with God to obey his commandments. And he said, well, yes, but sometimes it's not enough. I said, well, wait a minute. So God is not enough? So you're a higher law than God? You are like, the God 2.0, you're the better God? What and it just made me instantly, I just realized there is something very wrong here. And maybe he had my best interest at heart. He was just trying to influence me to be a good guy but I just thought it's a contract. It's a real thing. It's a contract, and I take it seriously. And I said, I'm not going to sign this. And he said, okay. And I was relieved that he didn't try to convince me to sign it or say, I'm gonna report this or something. And then I went out and I realized, oh my God, it was a test. He was testing me to see if I was true enough to myself, and if I understood the covenant I made with God is higher than any covenant you can make with a human being. And so I thought, wow, I passed the test. And I went out and I talked to the other guys, my old companions with it. I said, wow, what did you do that? And they all said, oh, well, we signed. And that was like the second something had happened in that would have shaken my faith when I was on my mission. But that was like the second thing where I realized, a certain part of this church is about power, and a certain part of these people in the church, of leaderships in the church, and that, of course, that's true with any leadership position anywhere. But this is the church. It was sacred to me. It's with a covenant with God. It was not, this was not, men had no reason putting their fingers in this. And I realized, to a certain extent, this is about him having power over other people because he likes it. And that's it. It has nothing to do with God, it's nothing to do with faith, nothing to do with religion or the gospel or truth. It's this guy wants power over other people. And that was like, it was a kick in the gut. I never got over that. That was one of the major steps to me losing my religion, to leaving the church eventually.
Yeah, I'm glad you told that story, because I definitely picked it up in reading that, and your perception of it was for you being a young person and kind of to be able to analyze it that way. I found that to be very enlightening, because when you're in 2 years in it, you're almost kind of, some would say, indoctrinated, where a lot of them would just sign it without giving it much thought, but you put thought into it. So it goes to show that you were very thoughtful in your faith during this whole time. You weren't going through the motions. You took it very, very seriously. And, so to me, that's to your credit as a young man to be able to do that. And, but then to analyze it the way you did, I found fascinating. And it's an intimidating situation. You're coming out, and here you have the mission president putting this in front of you, and you kind of pushed back a little bit. And, that says something about your character.
Well, of course, but don't forget, the mission president would say, yes, but Eric, you had just sinned, hadn't you? You had just broken the rules. So the devil was at your side at that moment. in a way, if I were, devil's advocate, that's what my argument would be.
Sure. Yeah, I can imagine. So, so as we're kind of, I want us to head to the third prayer, but I want us to lead up to what caused you to have that third prayer. And that was one day you're with who is your current wife. Who was your current wife at the time, and you're on the street, and you see this woman walk by. And tell us what happened.
Not a woman, a girl. I'm pretty sure she was a girl.
Okay.
Of course, I was 20, 24 too. So,
okay.
So everyone was younger then.
Yeah.
This was I was 30. I was finishing up with my my education in my master's degree in medieval German literature in Munich. I had returned to Germany and married this girl that I had baptized, and more and more I was breaking away from the church, and part of it was, the thing that happened, the real thing that happened was that afternoon in church, and we were returning home from church. It was the afternoon church. I was sitting in church, and more I had come to question what I was doing there. There's so much going on in the world, as you said, Cold War and all that, and big things. And we were sitting in church talking about, whether we should drink Coke or not. And at some point, I was becoming so critical that I was thinking, is this really something that God is important to God, whether we drink Coke or not? Does God really sitting up there saying, hope he doesn't drink Coke, hope he, I don't think so. I think there are more things going on in this world and in our lives than a lot of the things that we worry about as Mormons. We get so into this laws, into the covenant thing, that we start making sub-laws, and we're fascinated with all these things. But are we going out there, I don't know, helping people who are poor to do something? Are we doing something to make this world better, or are we really just, fascinated with our own belly buttons? And I sat there that day, and there was something going on that I'd heard 1,000 times, droning on and on in sacrament meeting. And And I said to myself, I'm wasting my time. I could be doing something. I could be writing a great book. I could be doing something in my life, with my life, which God gave me. God only gave me one life. He said, do something with it. I want to do something with it. And here I am. I'm just completely bored. I'm only sitting here out of reasons of obedience. I should have the strength to just get up and walk out. But I couldn't. I couldn't do it. I couldn't rebel against the institution. And of course, the institution is kind of like also mom and dad. It was all there. It was all layers and layers of expectation, on the church, and me sitting there in sacrament meeting. And I was so ashamed of myself that I could not leave. Just get up and, I'm a man. I should be, I'm in charge of my own life. I should just get up and say, I gotta go and leave. No one would. It's fine. But I could not do it, and I was so ashamed of myself, and I realized that I was so dependent on the church, on the institution, on the laws, on everything, that I had surrendered my own self-determination, my own will, to someone else, to the church, to an institution, to faceless entities making decisions that, trickle down to me, to prayer, to prayer where, Mormons, we pray a lot, right? We, should I do this? Should I take this job or that job or something? There's only one right decision. I have to pray, and I pray for a right decision. That is also giving up my independence to a higher instance, a higher being. And I wondered, is that what God really wants? Does God really want us to be like children, or does he want us to make our own decisions? Isn't this why he sent us here? To be independent beings of our own will, to be ourselves? And I sat there thinking all those things, and I realized that I just was not myself. And so we walked home. We walked to the U-Bahn station, the subway station, sitting in that subway station in Munich. And suddenly this girl walks by. And, it's just in the subway station. She has a short skirt on, and she's really pretty. Just ignore that. Plenty of pretty girls with short skirts on. And, it's just random, one of many. And I looked at her, and then instinctively, because I'm a Mormon, good Mormon boy, I look away, and I'm shamed that I looked at her. It was her legs. Her leg, I'm a guy, right? So I looked at her legs, and I'm even he who thinks thoughts are, is evil, has done the sin, and I looked away, and then I thought, I can't even do that. I'm a man. I'm supposed to be attracted. God gave me sexuality. I'm supposed to be attracted to women. It's normal. I look at it. I look at a pair of pretty wigs walking by. It doesn't hurt her. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt my wife. It doesn't hurt the world. It can't. For that to be a sin is ridiculous. And it's ridiculous that I've become some kind of, completely dependent, mindless creature that does not have a will of his own. And I turned to my wife and said, I don't think I'm going to church anymore. And she said, then that's it for us too, isn't it? And I said, no, you misunderstood. That has no, of course not. We're in love. I still love you. But she understood something that I didn't understand, and that was that the church, even though she left also later, so it wasn't, I'm a strict Mormon, and if you can't be a Mormon, you're dead to me. It wasn't that. It was one of the foundations of our relationship was the church. It was the experience of baptism. It was the spiritual thing together. It was going to church together, being in this society together. And once that was gone, we did not have enough in common to keep the relationship up. And I didn't understand that. I didn't know that. I was naive, love is forever, blah. But she got it. She knew, she understood it, that it was over, even then. And it was like the saddest day of my life. Well, there were sadder days to follow because of that. But
well, and so then you had your final prayer. Just tell us a lot about that.
Well, that was after there was another process, of course. I stopped going to church. And then I didn't leave the church. I just stopped going. And then I started experimenting with sexuality, and of course, men say, well, it's just a date, I don't have to do anything, and it doesn't mean I don't love her. I'm just, I just have to. There's a part of me I have to fulfill, right? But so I ended up in bed with another woman, and she ended up knowing about it just because women aren't stupid, I guess, and so she kicked me out one horrible night, and I wandered through the streets. I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna sleep on a park bench tonight, just because I'm in this melodramatic thing, and it was raining, and I laid down on a park bench. It was late, and I started feeling the coldness of the earth coming up through me. I said, oh my God, this is really cold out here. And so I called. I went to a friend's house, a friend that we both had, and she said, it's about time. Where I was waiting for you, because my wife had called her and said he'll probably be coming to you, and and so she was waiting for me, and I slept on her couch, and I got a new apartment, and etc. And it was clear that we would not be getting back together, and that there would be a divorce eventually, and that we were officially separated. And then at some point, I realized, I have to make a decision about the church. Am I going to be in the church, or am I not going to be in the church? I'm not going to be a Jack Mormon. I'm not going to be a guy who says, I'm not a Mormon, I drink, but I don't have the guts to leave the church, to just do the paperwork and get out and say, I just write it on my chest. I am no longer Mormon. They don't have the guts to do that. I don't want to be that guy, but it's a big step, and it was a gut wrenching step. And so I knelt down. I made the decision on my own. I did not ask God for help, for guidance, for permission. I did not say, well, Mormons ask for guidance on everything. I said, no, this is it. This is you. You have to make this decision. This is you taking your own life into your hands. What is your will? And I said, okay, I have to leave the church. That's the decision. So I knelt down one final time, and I said, God, if you're there, I'd almost stopped believing. I had stopped believing. I did not know anymore whether the church was true. I do not know now whether the church is true. I suspect it's not true. I suspect there is no God. I suspect it really is just a chance of nature or whatever. I hope it isn't. I hope there is a God. I suspect science is right. Okay, but I knelt down and I said, God, I don't know if you're there. I love you. I've dedicated my life to you. You're so meaningful for me, but I have to leave the church, and I have to stop believing in you. I have to, from now on, this is my own life. I will not pray to you anymore. I will no longer ask for guidance. I don't want an answer now. I just want you to know that I'm thankful for everything, but I have to leave. I said amen, and I got up, and that was it.
So this is all faith journeys are different, and and they often lead to different places. And I'm a person of faith, but I also think it's important that we have these conversations with people who were people of faith who have since left. And I still feel like you're still probably on a faith journey in some way. We all are, right?
Yeah.
It's a lifelong thing. And so I just wanted to say, Eric, I really appreciate you coming on. You're about one of the first people I ever reached out to, and it's really exciting to have you come on. And I'm glad you came on to tell your story.
I'm really glad. I'm sorry I talk so long. I tend to be a long talker, and the storyteller. But I really appreciate it. I really like it. I hope you can cut it into manageable bits somehow. But I really appreciated doing it and talking about it. I don't have a chance to talk about this stuff. I'm in a social circle now where people don't talk about religion. They think religion is for weak people, weak minds. And so I love talking about it.
Well, I appreciate it, Eric. And I just want to. So what I'm going to do for the audience is I'm going to provide a link to Eric's a copy of Eric's book. I'm also going to provide a link to his YouTube page. So check it out. And this book comes real quick. So you order it, and you'll get it pretty quickly. It's actually a micro publisher that you're involved with called Hulu Inc. And so you can get information on that on there as well. So I want everybody to like and subscribe. Links are in the description. Ring the notification bell from one of my next videos, and you all have yourself a great day.